Com a tinent d'alcalde d'Ecologia, Urbanisme, Mobilitat i Infraestructures és realment tot un privilegi, és realment molt increïble poder estar compartint en aquestes jornades internacionals aquesta trobada amb totes aquestes ciutats que són exemple, que són inspiració, que són el model que volem per al futur de les nostres ciutats, perquè el que volem és això, garantir espais, ciutats on poder viure. Jo crec que totes aquestes ciutats compartim aquesta visió per respondre als reptes del segle XXI que tenim, per respondre a la problemàtica que jo resumiria en 3 aspectes, clarament, que estan dins de l'emergència climàtica, dels reptes que ens situa la greu emergència climàtica que patim en les nostres ciutats, que és bàsicament la contaminació, el soroll i la calor. Són els 3 reptes que tenim arreu del món per poder garantir que es pot i es vol viure a les ciutats. Jo crec que per mi aquest és un dels missatges i a partir d'aquí totes estem compromeses, treballant diferents propostes, diferents models que permetin fer possible això, donar resposta i garantir que les ciutats no s'acaben mai, que les ciutats són un lloc on podem estar i estar amb qualitat i amb dignitat. I això a Barcelona ho representa aquest model, aquesta proposta de superilla a Barcelona, amb tantes i tantes actuacions. Després tindrem diferents moments també per compartir amb més detall, però crec que és molt interessant veure com cadascuna de nosaltres està aplicant aquesta proposta de transformació, aquest model que implica que la gent guanyi qualitat en positiu, que pugui viure amb salut, perquè aquest és el principal repte que tenim. Per tant, jo estic molt agraïda perquè sé que, tot i que venir a Barcelona, com deia, al començament sempre és una bona idea, a la primavera, doncs sé que totes i tots heu fet un forat a les vostres agendes per poder estar aquí, per poder compartir amb nosaltres tota la feina que estem fent. Nosaltres portem 8 anys de molt de treball i volem 4 anys més també seguint fent tota aquesta feina que necessita Barcelona per al present i per al futur, per garantir aquesta ciutat habitable per totes i tots. I no podíem tancar aquest balanç de 2 mandats d'una millor manera que fent-ho amb aquestes jornades internacionals. Veig a tots els equips de model urbà que estan per aquí repartits, d'infraestructures, d'ecologia, amb tota la gent que hem anat treballant. Gràcies, també volia començar aquesta benvinguda. Gràcies als tècnics i les tècniques, perquè sense vosaltres moltes de les coses que fem no serien possibles. I sé que us deixeu la pell, sé que us la deixeu a Barcelona i a totes aquestes ciutats, perquè també ens acompanyeu molts d'aquests equips tècnics, i sí que volia llançar aquí en nom de totes les ciutats un agraïment a tots els equips tècnics que feu possible que puguem desenvolupar aquestes accions. Per tant, amb tot això li passo la paraula a l'estimada amiga Núria Moliner, que conduirà tot el debat que ara iniciarem. Moltes gràcies, Núria.
Gràcies, Janet. Moltíssimes gràcies. Vols seure aquí? Moltes gràcies, Janet, per compartir aquestes paraules de benvinguda. Bon dia, hola a tothom. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the International Superblock meeting. Thank you so much for joining us today and also for the next 2 days of discussions, workshops, site visits, routes, and also parties, which is something that I'm really looking forward to celebrate and to learn more about this interesting and necessary urban project. I'm Núria Moliner, I'm an architect and communicator, and I'll be more than glad to host this event because I strongly believe in these urban projects and because I'm a researcher myself on innovative architecture and urbanism, so I honestly can't wait to listen to your thoughts and ideas and your remarkable experiences, and I'm sure that you will all agree because this topic is something that we really need to address as soon as possible. We need to create healthy, resilient, and sustainable cities for everyone. The truth is that we cannot look away. Pollution, environmental degradation, weather extremes, natural disasters, or biodiversity loss are and will be the new normal. We live in a world in ecological collapse that leads us to an uncertain and inhabitable future. And many of us, especially the youngest ones, are severely suffering from frustration, eco-anxiety, or even nihilism in a time of unprecedented environmental decay. But okay, I have good news. I didn't come here to be all catastrophic about it. And in fact, I strongly believe it's time to say, okay, doomer. As now, more than ever, we need hope, we need mobilization, we need action, and we need public policies to reverse the climate emergency. The more our reality becomes a dystopia, the more our cities become hostile for the life and for the planet, the more we need to believe in and to push for utopias, visionary and bold ideas that face present and future challenges and create a better horizon and better cities for everyone. In fact, I would like to suggest a new concept. I don't know if you've heard about it, but it's called protopia. A protopia is a realistic prototype that eventually brings us closer to a better future. A protopia is a state in which today is better than yesterday, maybe a little worse than tomorrow. And a protopian future is not only practical, but realizable. It is within our reach. It depends on each and every one of us. And I'm sure that today we will be happy to see many interesting and inspiring urban protopias from different cities. As you know, since we're talking about cities, we need to take into account that cities have been and remain to be the main climate change hotspot accelerator. Cities account for 2% of the surface of the planet, and yet they are responsible for 70% of greenhouse gas emissions. Luckily, in recent years, we have seen how, also in front of the inability of nation-states to respond to such an urgent problem, we have seen how cities have taken the lead. And this is why we're here today in Barcelona, a city that has become an international benchmark for the superblock model, which has been recognized by the United Nations as an example of success in fighting climate change. Proof of that is that in Barcelona, between 2021 and 2022, they were up to, correct me if I'm wrong, Janet, 250 international visits or activities and delegation visits requesting to learn more about our project, about the next new city model that we're pushing with the Superblock Barcelona plan. And also in 2021, the R&D Tuner Block project was created so that representatives from 7 different European cities could regularly meet with Barcelona to learn from its strategies and also to implement and expand the Superblock plan in different urban fabrics. Lately, also we have to mention that Barcelona has been named a resilient hub according to the UN. So that is something we can be proud of, but for sure there's room for improvement. We still have a lot to do, and we're all in this together. We can learn a lot about each other in this path towards a more conscious and a more resilient city. Lambeth, Copenhagen, Ghent, Ljubljana, Lod, Brussels, Paris, Vitoria, Valencia, Milano. These are the cities joining us today to share their valuable experiences. So if any of you, as city administrators, politicians, decision makers, professionals in the field, or just individuals or citizens are thinking or might ever think that your efforts are isolated, we're here to prove you that actually you're not alone. And to find out firsthand what all these cities are doing, and more importantly, how are they doing it, let's introduce them all, and please let's greet them with a round of applause. Maybe you can put your hand up so we can know which one are you. So, Resina Chowdhury, Councillor for Sustainable Lambeth and Clean Air of London Borough and Lambeth, welcome. Nice to meet you. Camilla van Ders, Chief Architect of Copenhagen. Philip Watty, Deputy Mayor for Mobility, Public Space and Urban Planning of Ghent. Rok Snidacic, Deputy Mayor responsible for urban and traffic planning, urban design and environment of Ljubljana. Adam Pustelnik, Deputy Mayor of Lodz. Bart Don, Alderman of Mobility and Public Works for the City of Brussels. David Belliard, Deputy Mayor of Paris, in charge of the transformation of public space, transport, mobility, and the street codes and roads. Raimundo Ruiz de Escudero, City Councillor of the Department of Mobility and Public Space of Vitoria-Gasteiz. Giuseppe Grezzi, City Councillor Sustainable for Mobility and Public Space of Valencia. Pierfrancesco Maran, Deputy Mayor in charge of Public Space and Neighborhoods of Milano. And, of course, last but not least, Janet Sanz, Deputy Mayor for Ecology, Urban Planning, Infrastructures and Mobility of Barcelona. So, well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm really looking forward to learn a bit more about your city. So let's start with something we all have in common, whether we might not like it. I'm talking about the elephant in the room. I'm talking about cars. And a city that comes to mind that has changed its urban space to reverse private transport supremacy is Lambeth, London, definitely. Desina, I know, correct me if I'm not right, I know that 94% of curbside in Lambeth was used to provide and manage car parking, but only 40% of households own a car. So I assume it was time to rethink who the curbside was for, wasn't it?
Yes, yes.
Maybe you can use the microphone, so I think you just need to, yeah, it's okay.
Is it on?
You can, yeah.
Can everyone hear me? Excellent, okay. Yes, Nuria, yes it was time. Because it's not fair and it's not sustainable either, particularly when 3 out of 5 households don't even own a car. People on the lowest incomes in Lambeth are more likely to walk or use public transport, and it's unfair for those who can't afford to drive, who are disproportionately affected by toxic fumes from made by cars. So the curbside is the part of the road where cars are parked, and it's the largest public space controlled by Lambeth Council, with an area equivalent to 194 football pitches. Curbside space is at a premium, with large swathes taken up by parked vehicles, while our pavements are so cramped and cluttered and difficult for people to get around, and even harder if you're trying to push a pram or a buggy, have mobility or sensory impairments, or older and frailer. So the curbside, we know, it isn't just built for cars, it's built for people too. So we need to change this so that people have more equal access to this important shared space. So that's why in Lambeth we launched the curbside strategy, one of the first of its kind in the UK. It's all about transforming our streets into places for people, not just cars. And it commits Lambeth Council to reclaiming at least 25% of this space from vehicle parking and introduce sustainability measures to fulfill a key pledge set out in our climate action plan. It's going to reimagine our public space so that it can be enjoyed by everyone in Lambeth, while also addressing the very real change of a changing climate. The strategy has 4 priorities: enabling accessible and active travel, creating social spaces, increasing climate resilience, and reducing traffic and emissions. So we will make our pavements clear and accessible, and the curbside will have more places to park a bike, a cargo bike, or an adapted bike. You know, we need people to feel confident walking, cycling, wheeling, scooting in our borough, and we need our curbside to support us in achieving this. So we're going to create more spaces for people in places for people with London's biggest community parklet programme, putting social space on the doorstep and empowering more people to make use of our shared curbside so people can enjoy their neighbourhoods without them feeling dominated by parked cars. Climate change is already causing more extreme weather, so the strategy will allow us to implement climate resiliency measures such as sustainable drainage systems to address flood risk, and more trees and green spaces to provide shade during the hottest days of the year. At the same time, more green spaces to help make our streets more inviting places to be, so we'll plant more trees and greenery, helping to soak up water when it rains and provide shade in hot weather. And finally, we want to reduce emissions and traffic on our streets. As air pollution has a devastating effects on people's health in London. It's the single biggest environmental risk to health and disproportionately affects children, older people and people with health conditions. So this strategy will help to address a major source of poor air quality, which is traffic. It'll support more sustainable journeys with car club spaces, electric charging points, parking for businesses using cargo bikes and electric delivery vehicles. You know, we're also changing how much we charge for parking, setting a price that reflects the impact that larger polluting vehicles have. So hopefully, by everyone working together, because we can't deliver all this change alone, we can reimagine our streets and walking through the Ramblas here, you know, it's really, I found it really, really inspiring. So I have a lot to take back with me. But yeah, we want to make Lambeth a healthier and more sustainable place to be, and a fairer one too.
Thanks, Regina, and certainly it is. Thank you. Certainly a way to take public space back and to reduce pollution, which is so necessary. And now let's move into more and other strategies fighting car pressure, because there's not just one sole perfect solution, there are multiples of them. And let me talk to Bart about this. Bart, in Brussels, you have implemented the Good Move plan, aiming to provide each user with sustainable mobility solutions, options. And can you tell us what means of transport are you strengthening, and how does that impact within the urban environment?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. In Brussels, I'm deputy mayor of the city of Brussels. Every large city is organized in a different way. Brussels have 19 communes, and there's the region of Brussels who is, putting out directives. And the main, something very important that the regional government did was creating a framework in which the region itself, but also the public transport companies and also the communes could operate. And the objective of Good Moves was to use mobility as a leverage to reallocate space. Mobility is not just a means at itself. We don't move just, you could walk in the park because you like to walk in the park, but moving around, you move towards something, towards a destination. And the objective of Good Move is, you want people to live, to work, or to come shop, walk, or enjoy a city that is nice, that with a good air quality, with space. And so the main purpose of the plan was to reallocate the space, to give more space to pedestrians, to give more, and there's the picture, and the picture is over there, to give more space to pedestrians. And one big project was, we had, you see it, I hope it's clear enough on the picture. We had this big boulevard, 4-lane boulevard, crossing our city center. If you've ever been to the city of Brussels, the Bourse used to be, the place in front of the Bourse used to be just a four-lane highway. That's finished. I think now people have difficulty, that's why we show it, have difficulty with imagining that there was place, or we gave place to a four-lane, practically a highway in our city center. And what did we get in return? We get in return more green area and also much more visitors. Even in winter, this 2 kilometers of a pedestrian zone is filled with people. So it's really public space that is used. And so giving space to these pedestrians is also, it's our most important way of going around. It is walking. By implementing and we're going to talk about it some more later, a new circulation scheme, we also give more space to bikes. And what we also did in Brussels, and that is an advantage we had, I think, compared, for example, with Ghent, was our public transport system. We had already a very performant public transport system. What did we do? We invested heavily in new bus lanes. In 2019, we implemented 3 new bus lanes in the city of Brussels. We are working on 4 new tramways. One is under construction now. At the moment, will be finished in 24. We started in 2019, and 3 others are in progress of being implemented. So, investing in this alternative is something that is really important, because we see, if we look at the share of households owning a car, the bigger the offer of public transport, the less people owning a car. Also, we worked on the price of public transportation. Now, people of 25 years old, also people older than 65, can use our public transport system for €1 a month. And that's also an incentive to use more the alternatives. So creating more offer, working on the price was very important to create this model shift. And that is something we've seen as well with the implementation of our new circulation scheme. That was 3 months later, we saw already a 20% reduction of car traffic and a 20% increase of people biking in our city. So these after only 3 months, these first results are very encouraging. And we know, and there are many examples that we can share today. We know that it is that these kind of investments, that these kind of projects, that they work, and we will continue implementing them.
Thank you. I think this is a city for pedestrians and public transport for sure. And I think we need to add Ghent to this conversation, because maybe afterwards, Philip and Bart, you can share your experiences, because I've seen that these 2 cases have a lot of similarities, most of your experiences actually. And I want to know, Philip, in Ghent, I know that Ghent has a new motto called Ghentification. I'm already interested in this name. And there are 3 main pillars articulating this motto. Can you tell us which ones, and how do you came up with the name?
Ghentification comes from the verb gentify, and it's very simple why we do have our own verb, because we were very jealous on the marvelous city of Copenhagen. Copenhagen is known, you know the verb of Copenhagen, Copenhagenize, so we wanted to have our own verb. As simple as that. Okay. But I think we all know what is important. I don't have to repeat what Rosina and Bart said. It's about space for people. It's about building a city for people and not for cars. And maybe I can see the first picture. Yes, it's coming. Yeah, there. Those 2 pictures show why we do what we do. On the left, you see a square in Ghent, in the center of Ghent, a parking spot, 6 years ago. At the right, you see the same square, how it is now. And that's the consequence of our circulation plan. So that's why we do what we do. What I sometimes miss in mobility policy is a strategy. Everyone knows what is important, but it's important also to have a strategy. And there we come to our three lines. It's important that we have results and we reassure them and we strengthen them. Our first line is, of course, the circulation plan, circulation measures. Why? We are not a rich city like Copenhagen. So it was impossible to build the same infrastructure in the years that I had as a deputy mayor, 6 years. So what we did was a circulation plan where it was impossible for cars to drive through the city. We have a car-free center, 6 zones around it for car drivers. If they wanted to go from one zone to another with a car, they had to use the ring road, never through the city. For pedestrians, for cyclists, for taxi drivers, for public transport, nothing changed. And that was a huge success. It was very difficult to implement, but it was a huge success. The share of cyclists, for example, doubled in some years from 22% of the model split cyclists. We are now at about 40%, so it doubled. Air quality bettered. There was more space for pedestrians. The accidents, a decrease of accidents of 35%, so it had impact. We are doing now the same in the neighborhoods around the center. Circulation plans for the outskirts. With the same logic, we want to get rid of through traffic in the neighborhoods where people live. And that model, we copied it, to be honest. We copied it from Groningen in the Netherlands. They did it in the 70s. That was a long time before the others in the 70s. We copied it in 2017, and other cities copied it already a bit. Yeah. Okay, circulation. But it's important you have two other lines. The second line is investing in infrastructure. The circulation line is fast, it's cheap, and it has impact. The second line, infrastructure, is very slow. You need time and you need budget. It's slow and it's expensive, but it reassures what you have reached with the circulation line. So now we are investing a lot in cycling and pedestrian infrastructure. So I built in the 10 years that I am a deputy mayor, I built 40 bridges, cycling and pedestrian bridges and underpasses and so on. That's very important to reassure what we reached with the circulation plan. So that's what we also will do in the next years. And the third line is also very important. It's working on culture. We started an organization 5 years ago, the Fietsambassade, Cycling Embassy of Ghent. And the purpose of the Cycling Embassy of Ghent is to better the culture of cycling in Ghent. And they do it with lots of actions, sometimes very cheap. For example, our air and grease action at some points of cycling routes, the cycling embassy is there, and every cyclist that passes by, they pull up their tires and they clean up the chain and grease it. Very simple, very cheap, but at that moment you say to cyclists, you are important for us. You are the most important road user that we have, not like in the old days where cyclists were in the margin of the road. So that's important. Also working on culture, not only for cyclists, but also for pedestrians. So if you do that, you have first the fast, cheap, huge impact of the circulation plan. Then you make it, you reassure it with infrastructure, and then you make that the support gets broader by working on culture. That's to gentrify, that's gentrification.
Thank you. Thank you, Philip. Your words are powerful, But I think nothing is stronger than the result, the image of what you have done in your cities. And I personally cannot even understand why would anybody be against these measures once you're there. It's undeniable, it's evidence, and it's what we need. So thank you for sharing your experience as well. And I know there's someone thinking, we've done or we're doing something quite similar. Adam, in Lodz, many streets in Lodz are turning into wooners. Did I say it right? Perfect. Yeah? Is that the pronunciation great? Can you define this concept of yours? And does it imply a new hierarchy according to the Zielone policy program? Maybe you can tell us a bit more about them too.
That's a good start. You know, before I will get to the point, I just wanted to highlight surreality of our today's, let's say, squad. I studied in Ghent, at Uni Ghent, while I had a scholarship in an internship in Brussels, and half of my class came from Valencia. But what's funny, he became the mayor after I already graduated, so I didn't manage to experience all those nice things. But yeah, thanks a lot, guys. I'm a pretty typical politician. So basically, what I do for a living is selling successes that are not mine. Here in the room are two women, Anya and Gosha, if you could rise up. No, don't be shy. No, don't be shy, please. Yeah. And basically they did all that. They gave the expertise and their team, they give a thought, and they gave the realization of the project. The only merit I can give to myself is not stopping it. Before I'll go to this concept that you beautifully pronounced it, better than half of the people in my city, the Woonerf. I'll tell you something to give a little bit of concept. I mean, I'm not originally from Poland, but I co-manage a city in Poland, and it's very important, in my opinion, from the perspectives of all discussions like this. You have this nice saying, like, if you can run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But no matter what you do, keep moving forward. So having a reverse logic, before you run, you got to learn how to walk. In Poland, not more than 20 years ago, it was a living picture of a disaster. 30% unemployment rate, post-communist economy with collapsed, formerly fully national businesses, complete lack of indigenous accumulated capital, for example, something that's obvious in old Western European countries. And even though I'm also a German citizen, I have a pretty objective perspective when looking at my city, it gave us a little bit of a different starting point, to be diplomatic. And right now, for example, when we look at certain urban solutions, certain processes, it's really hard to compare, with all due respect to my city, to Brussels or Ghent, where I lived for a year. Ghent looked like a fairy tale. Really. When I woke up there, I came there in the middle of the night, castles, beautiful streets, a lot of nice restaurants, like 150,000 students, one of the biggest universities in Belgium. And when you compare it to Polish cities, including the capital, they started from a different point. Why am I saying that? Polish cities, in my opinion, generally Poles, should be really proud of themselves, because the jump to future that we did from the starting point is enormous. However, those years of communism and those starting point and the collapsed economy put us in a little bit of a different moment and point at the Maslow's pyramid. And for example, what I mean by that, For example, when we as a team and my colleagues who did this beautiful project, we are pretty similar age. When we, let's say, inherited the city, there was huge urban sprawl already. Because in 2010, so 13 years ago, the city had 3% of master plan coverage. And in Poland, there is a pretty strange legal system that when you don't have a master plan, you basically can build whatever you want. There is a post-communist regulations called WZ, and it's a kind of a surrogate of a master plan, but it's very, it leaves a lot of space for interpretation. So if someone has a smart architect, they can basically prove that everything is doable. And it affected the city's structure, city's thread, city's landscape, to a point that right now we have to tackle many of the challenges that just happened. And this is a great example of what the girls and their teams did. They inherited a totally degenerated urban structure with a very fundamental problem. There were no people there, and people didn't want to live there. And the people who lived there, first thing they thought about to leave this place, to mostly better-looking and wealthier suburbs, because that's the inheritance of the communism, that suburbs look better than the city centers. And they had a very huge challenge, because which particularly is a golden child of capitalism, a city that has been built in like 30 or 40 years, a little bit more than 100 years ago. There was a tax-free zone in the former Russian Empire, and all the industrialists came in from all over the world, and from a little village to almost 1 million citizens in 3 or 4 decades. So the city structure did not follow the processes that it experienced. That's why there were literally no public spaces besides the roads. And my colleagues invented a brilliant idea to use the roads as a source of a public space. And those woonerfs it's a very simple concept that we stole from the Netherlands. It's a street that you make green, you make slower movement, and you try to fill it with life. In Poland, because of the urban sprawl and because of socioeconomic habits of the people, a car, up till today, is a synonym of a luxury to a lot of big parts of Polish society, because simply up to the end of the 90s, they did not have cars, or they have post-communist old Fiats. So having a BMW is like a pure synonym of social advance. And that's why it requires sophistication and pretty deep dialogue. And I wanted to once again have a big round of applause for the girls who managed to convince a lot of people and politicians in a country where having a car is like the synonym of luxury and socioeconomic success, to convince people to do so with only small protests. After people saw what could be done with a little bit of a greenery, with a little bit changing the way you think, people love it. But first of all, it was a pretty challenging work to make this first step and to convince the society to try this solution. I hope we'll not end on this one project, and I hope that with my colleagues from the office we will do numerous projects like this. But the sad thing is, and I want to say to people of Barcelona, it's really nice of you that you invited me, but this day made me a little bit frustrated, because right now I'm even more aware how much work is still ahead of us.
Thanks. Thanks, Adam. It is clear how important it is to convince society and to convey this information, because at the end, information is power, it's what moves society. And I would also like to listen to a similar example now, actually not far from here, Valencia. But you will find you will find some nuances regarding the medieval city center in this case. If I'm not wrong, since 2015 in Valencia, they have taken back 150,000 square meters of public space with new squares, streets of preference for pedestrians, and also a protected school environment, which is something that we're going to talk about a little bit more with different cities. So, Giuseppe, can you briefly tell us what's the secret and what does it have to do with the medieval city center?
Okay. First of all, in Valencian, I want to, vull agrair la invitació i felicitar per lo que heu fet, organitzant este congrés internacional que és verdaderament molt potent. Now I'll go to English because...
Giuseppe, si vols parlar en català, parlem en català, que també és estrany no fer-ho.
No, because I'm seeing that not so many people as the translator, so it's not a problem.
Okay.
So, I've been thinking about this question. Is there any secret on what we've been done in Valencia in the last, let's say, 8 years? And I can tell you that the answer is no. It's no because what I think is necessary to do this is to have a strong political and citizen will and also have great inspiration. Great inspiration that we had from all the cities and all that are you here during these years. Inspiration from Janet Sadikan. I told her yesterday that was a great inspiration, the tactical urbanism that we'll be doing since 2007, and any other personalities in any other cities in the world. Valencia, Valencia, as we used to say in Valencia, is walking towards the future. And we are doing this with the different gates. The gates of the citizenship that want better neighborhoods, they want better environment, they want breathe better air, less noises, better relational spaces in the neighborhoods, they want less car, and they want better alternatives to move around the city and also in the metropolitan area. If you don't know Valencia, Valencia is Spain's third city, is 800,000 inhabitants, is a metropolitan area, 1.6 inhabitants, and it's like under 30 square kilometers of our territory. So what we've done is to leave cars in the last place of these mobility pyramids because we had to change what we've been doing and what happened in the city in the last 30, 40 years. So since 2015, we start with the new project, with the reformist plan, when we put the citizen in the center of our action, of our measures. As you said, we made a full range of measures to recover public space. You can see some image there of the new Plaza de la Reina Square, but also all around schools, we recovered like 200 square meters, and now we have 15 new projects that we are working on in the city. What we've done also, Valencia is a flat city. It's a very flat. It's close by the seaside. It's a Mediterranean city. It's a compact city. But it was strange. There were not a political to improve, to have better cyclist lane. No? So we worked with that to improve all that. In these 7 years, we made 60 kilometers of new bike lanes. This is a better alternative to move around with car in the city that is so compact urban territory. And also, we worked with the citizenship to make a participative budget. People could vote, could promote, propose, and vote where should we invest in the neighborhood. And in every time we did it, in the last 7 years, they decided that they want more bike lanes, more pedestrian areas, they want better walkable streets, new gardens. It was no surprise, because it happens everywhere in every city. When we ask people what they want, they say they want better city, livable city, better alternatives. And also we made more investments in the public transportation system. We increased the budget by 40%. We created dedicated bus lanes to have faster and more reliable buses. And also we worked to improve the city coverage of the bus transportation system. With this, we increased it by 10% till 2019. We know with the pandemic, we've been a loss of passengers in our public transportation system, but now we are recovering by 2022, 2023. And also, we improved the night lanes that almost cover all night long to give these services that can provide a better alternative to leave the car at home. It's true that the European and Mediterranean city have a modal share of car around 25%. It depends a lot from the metropolitan area that we receive so many cars moving around. But what we've done also to reduce the use of cars and the moving of cars around the city is to have a residential area for parkings. We are creating it all around the city, and it helps us to reduce the number of cars that want to park in the public space. And with that, we can create super block and other measures that you'll be watching in these pictures. The last one is a one that is built up around the area called Eixample, that is similar to Barcelona, like square blocks in the development area that will be done like 150 years ago. So with all this, we also reduced pollution. In 2021, Valencia has been the city that has reduced more the pollution between the big cities. We've been reducing NO2 by 15% and PM10 by 27%. With all this, we're not succeeded yet. We are in a transition city, and we want to go forward, having great inspiration, great program, and to change the way the people live in our city. And it's our commitment. We have a strong political will. It's changing also the way people look at this, because as we know, all of us in our cities, there are always people against criticism in newspapers, everywhere, because it's a resistance that's typical for human being. We resist to changes, just because we are human beings, because we have habits, we have a way of thinking created, but we should not fear that, because it's always like the resistance will change, then we will see that what we are doing is better for them. So that's why we are very happy to be here. Thank you so much, and let's share all our visions and measures that can help us to have better cities in the future in the 20th century. Thank you.
For sure, we are a species of habits. And I think city centers in general have historically suffered high car pressure. And since Adam was talking about fairy tales, urban fairy tales, I think now it's time to turn to another urban fairy tale, which is definitely Copenhagen. In fact, Copenhagen is focusing its efforts on this same problem with different kinds of strategies. And Camila, before you start, I have to say, probably Copenhagen is my favorite city in the world, just after Barcelona, of course. But I've been there many times to learn from your urban design, which is remarkable. So I just needed to say that. And before you say anything, I also wanted to say that I'm curious to know which are your new strategies when it comes to the idea to reduce car traffic in the city center, because I've heard that you are also strengthening the identity and the character of those areas in order to do so. Maybe you can tell us about all these 4 principles of your strategy.
Well, thank you very much. And I must say that this concept of gentifying, I'm going to start using now, because I think for so many years Copenhagen was the model city for urban redevelopment, and this concept of Copenhagenizing was really strong. But we have fallen behind all of these other great cities. We've rested on our laurels. So even though Copenhagen has 50% cyclists in the modal split, many public spaces dedicated to people, you know, we've come to a standstill, and we are now looking to cities internationally to help lift us. So I think that's really important to say, that it's not just a fairy tale in Copenhagen. But what we've been looking at is the historic center kind of returning to this notion of identifying our core strengths. And Copenhagen has developed, there's a little diagram there, over the last many decades, the core of the city center. But what we're looking at now, as we're thinking about decarbonization in the city, Copenhagen has the goal of being climate neutral by 2025. That's in 2 years. We've reduced carbon by 82%, but the last greenhouse gas emissions that we need, 30% of them are from mobility in the city. So really addressing private car ownership is the key to unlocking that potential. So looking at car spaces and parking and transportation in the city center, it started really as an anti-terror project. Like so many European cities, there was this notion of fear associated to cars. But very quickly our project became about better air quality, providing green areas for citizens, and reducing car traffic. And so inspired by Barcelona, we had a citizens' assembly where and I think when you talk about the democratic budget of people, learning from these citizens' methodologies of involvement between each other is really important. And one thing that the citizens said and the advice they gave to the politicians was to remove 85% of street parking. So really dramatically take space away from parked cars and move that into people places that were green, that had local character, that were non-commercial. And so 2 summers ago we had a series of pilot projects experimenting with these streets all over the city, doing tactile urbanism projects. And then now our politicians have adopted the plan for the central city to take away 85% of street parking, give more spaces for handicap services, give more spaces for deliveries, and then what we're putting back into the streets are spaces to live full lives, for green spaces. We're very inspired by Paris and the biodiversity strategy there, to have spaces that are for neighborhoods. It was a really strong sentiment from our public that they did not want commercial spaces. I think cities everywhere during the COVID pandemic saw, you know, commercial activities like roll into public spaces. New York has just done a public space czar with that theme in mind. And so rolling a little bit of that back and talking about free democratic spaces is one of our principles. But I think for us, kind of going back to this notion of the historic core and telling some of the stories through the architecture. I think this beautiful building we are in today talks about this heritage and why it's important to have those memories. And so we're looking to tell the stories of our public space transformation, tell the stories of fires, of plague, of water lines in the public space design. So Copenhagen is sort of trying to rediscover ourselves and push the next generations of these public space transformations. And over the next 10 years, I think that's the last slide, we have 10 projects coming. Oh, one more. That's just the parking. Oh, 10 projects coming in everywhere in the city center. And then next year, we'll be scaling that up to the neighborhoods around the city center with 50 woonefs or living streets and 13 car-free city districts. So really trying to learn, I think, from Barcelona in terms of strategy and scaling up. And I think for us, it's really been a lesson that we might have you know, had this fame, but we have fallen behind, and we have to take some of the very, very difficult conflicts with car ownership, particularly in terms of mitigating this climate crisis. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you can continue moving forward towards this carbon neutral city with higher air quality and more green areas. And we will for sure follow up what you're doing. And now I would also like to talk with David about Paris. You were mentioning his work as a source of inspiration to stem from. And I wanted to talk about the opportunity to raise your family in a healthy city, in a healthy environment. And I'm sure that this is one of those feelings that would for sure make us feel proud of the place we inhabit. And for instance, in Paris, David, you have been doing lots of projects of public space transformation, increasing bike lanes for sure, and also working on streets close to schools, which is something I think we could develop with you in order to create healthier and friendlier cities for everyone. Could you tell us a bit more about what you're doing in Paris and your several projects?
Thank you. It's very difficult to speak after Copenhagen because maybe Paris is an inspiring city, but Copenhagen is a model for us as well. We want to make Paris like a new Copenhagen in terms of bicycle lanes, but I will speak about that. So thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here because transform the public space is a political fight. It's not easy each day. Sometimes it's very difficult. And I'm very happy to see that all these cities are transforming their public space in the same direction. And I'm so, proud to be in this table to speak with this revolution we are making now. I just want to have just one thought about the demonstration today, because today there is a very huge demonstration with a lot of protesters against government in Paris. So it's not a thought just to say that I support them, of course, but it's just to say that today we will create together the largest pedestrian area of the world in Paris. That's a big step, a very positive step, but it's not exactly the project we have. And I think that we can do the same, but in a different way and a different strategy. Just to say that Paris is a very small city, maybe the smallest city it's here. It's very dense. We have more inhabitants per kilometers carré, square than Calcutta for the area I am elected. We don't have enough nature, and it's an heritage city. We have seen together Emily in Paris. So it's a very nice Netflix series, but it's difficult to change an heritage city because it's very difficult. Now, just a figure I want to share with you. 50% of the public space in Paris is dedicated to cars. And so, as everybody hears, we want to reallocate this public space to another uses, bicycle lanes, pedestrians, of course, but also nature, because Paris is not enough prepared to face with climate change, and it's a very huge problem for us. So, in 2020, we have been elected and re-elected on this project. The project to a massive transformation of public space. And the question for me is not to know if it works or not, because it works. Less pollution, less noises. It's exactly what we have to do to prepare Paris faced with climate change. It's exactly that. The question is to have and to continue to have a majority to support this politics, to support this transformation, because it's a big change in the way to live this town. So I just want to focus on two things, two programs we have. We have a lot of programs, so two programs. Bicycle lanes, plan vélo, bicycle plane, like Copenhagen. We want to make Paris a very, very a city which you can use your bicycle in safety. It's 250 million euro we have making on the tables to create 180 kilometers of bicycle lanes and 100,000 bicycle parks on the town. Why? Because we want to give people an alternative of car. Because I'm sure a key of success is to say people you can do in a different way, and it's better for you. And it's better for you. And the second programs is Rue aux Écoles, the streets around the school. What we want to do, it's not exactly the same that the block strategy, because Paris is not exactly the same that Barcelona, but we want to change the neighborhood, and we want to change the street just in front of your home. So we have made some realization, like you, by cutting the car traffic and to transform streets around school to protect children, to protect their parents, and to have a different way of living the neighborhoods. I've made, if you can just, yes, thank you. So it's in one example, maybe another one. As you can see, it's exactly the same that I have already seen. We cut the circulation, so we change, of course, the circulation plane of the neighborhood, and we create new uses, nature, for example, but also game for children, bicycle space, etc., etc. There is another example. Maybe like that, for example. So as you can see, it's very different. Everything is changed with that. And people are very supportive with this politics. It's not a huge politic like Rivoli, because international press wants to, when they are in Paris, they want to make some film or some interview about Rivoli, about the, Ketsen, but in fact, the real change and the real revolution is in the neighborhood. It's something not so shiny, maybe, but it's something that people like, and it's something that changes the daily life of people, and I'm sure that it's a key of success. It's a key of success to have the support. We will see in the next election. I am just in the middle of the mandate. But I'm sure if you want to have a majority for this politics, it's to show people that they have an alternative and they have a transformation for the better, for a better life in their neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I agree, communication and engagement are one of the main key elements of these projects for them to be successful and to move forward and to continue. Let's talk about further strategies for more resilient and healthier cities. David, you were talking about the need to favor bikes, and I think we also need to consider that by boosting mobility, cycling mobility, we might also need to create a collective subjectivity that seems to go beyond the limits of urban planning. And I think it's interesting to tackle and to wonder about this. And let's ask Janet about this challenge. Janet, Barcelona has succeeded in increasing the use of bicycles. Actually, I recently read that more than 40% of the cyclists we see today in our streets have been moving by bike for less than 2 years. That means that something must have changed, or someone must have done something right for so many people to join cycling in such a short period of time. And I know that you're not only fostering cycling as a source of healthy and active mobility, but also promoting public transport, and also, first and foremost, you want to defend the walkable city, a city in which we can walk pretty much everywhere. How can you find a balance between these three modes of sustainable and active transportation? I parlem en català, no? És dir, que ara és molt raro parlar-te en anglès.
No, moltes gràcies. Jo, com no vull que els meus estimats col·legues marxin sense escoltar el català de la nostra ciutat, faré la intervenció, així que us demano que us poseu la traducció, però sí que m'agradaria compartir, com deia ara la Núria, una idea que em sembla molt senzilla però també molt potent. Les nostres ciutats seran el que la seva ciutadania vulgui que siguin. I això és molt important, perquè durant molts anys ens han fet creure que les ciutats havien de ser d'una determinada manera. I ens han fet integrar en tot el disseny urbà de la ciutat una normalització del fet que el 60%, en el cas de Barcelona, el 60% de l'espai públic estigués dedicada que passin o aparquin cotxes. I això és una anomalia, i ho hem de dir clar, és una anomalia. No és el que la gent necessita. A Barcelona el 74% dels veïns i veïnes, avui, 2023, caminen, van en bicicleta o es mouen en transport públic. Aquesta és la realitat. Però en canvi hi ha 1,5 milions de cotxes que entren a la ciutat, majoritàriament, perquè venen d'altres zones de la regió metropolitana, que a més el 70% d'aquests cotxes, d'aquest aproximadament milió de cotxes que entren de fora, tenen cobertura en metro i en transport públic. I aquesta és una dada molt important. Per tant, durant masses anys se'ns ha dit que l'espai públic és per al cotxe i el pot utilitzar. En una ciutat, ara deia el David, una mica ens posava en la qüestió de París és una ciutat petita, Barcelona és una ciutat molt justa, és una ciutat situada absolutament entre molts límits geogràfics. Tenim una situació realment molt complexa i hem de fer acupuntura amb cadascuna de les nostres actuacions. Per això tenim un disseny urbà, una distribució de l'espai públic de façana a façana que ha de permetre una redistribució, un plantejament just i democràtic. Això és el que estem treballant des de fa 8 anys i l'objectiu és que la ciutadania tingui aquesta prioritat, que pugui caminar segura. Una ciutat segura, ho deia ahir a la seva conferència Janet Sadiq-Khan, començar situant els modes alternatius que redueixen, no una mica, el 50% dels accidents, que ens tendeixen a 0 accidents, que és el que volem. És canviar i posar un carril bicicleta, és posar un carril autobús, és posar voreres àmplies on poder caminar, on els nens i nenes juguin tranquils. Jo recordo quan vaig començar a la ciutat com a regidora, una de les primeres coses que vaig fer és una audiència amb nens i nenes de Barcelona on em deien tenim por de jugar a la pilota. Per què? Perquè passen cotxes. Perquè els cotxes ens fan sentir insegurs. I si la ciutat està preparada i és segura per als nens i nenes, ho és per tothom, perquè som tots i totes vulnerables en algun moment de la nostra vida. I per tant hem de preparar la ciutat precisament per a aquestes diversitats, per a aquesta situació d'interdependència que vivim al llarg de la nostra vida, perquè mai som forts i perfectes per poder-ho fer tot, perquè les situacions van canviant. Per això nosaltres ho hem tingut claríssim, i ara ho deies, Núria, hem començat, com precisament inspirant-nos amb totes les iniciatives que es feien en altres ciutats, la potencialitat de Barcelona, tot i que tenim pendent, tenim una part molt plana, la bicicleta en el centre. Hem triplicat en aquests 8 anys, hem triplicat precisament els carrils bici, passant dels 100 quilòmetres que teníem a gairebé 300 que ja tenim en marxa, garantint la connectivitat de totes les àrees de la ciutat, de tots els barris. No hi ha zones descobertes. Avui pots anar de Llobregat a Besòs, de mar a muntanya, en bicicleta, de forma àgil, segura, molt important. I ara el repte, lligant de nou amb els nens i nenes, és que els nens i nenes puguin anar en bicicleta per la nostra ciutat. Avui això ens ho estan ensenyant els nostres pares i mares cada divendres, anant a les escoles amb les bicicletes, amb els seus fills i filles, i hem d'aprendre d'aquest exemple i facilitar que la ciutat sigui segura per elles, per aquestes famílies. Però no només és amb la bicicleta, evidentment, també amb el transport públic. I per tant, necessitem incrementar aquest transport públic a nivell metropolità i a nivell de ciutat. I a més, quan la ciutat s'ha posat a empènyer en aquest sentit, hem vist com la resta d'administracions feien la feina que no feien des de feia tants anys, perquè necessitem inversions que no depenen de la nostra ciutat. Però sí que hem garantit, per exemple, una de les qüestions, més bus que mai. Tenim més autobusos que mai, funcionant molt bé per tota la ciutat. Hem, a més, fet una política de priorització que aquests carrils d'autobusos siguin exclusius i, per tant, puguin circular amb més seguretat, amb més velocitat i siguin competitius, siguin sexis. I, per tant, que permetin que deixis el cotxe i te'n vagis a l'autobús, te'n vagis al metro, canviar aquests modes. També, per exemple, estem connectant el tramvia per la Diagonal. Barcelona ha sigut històricament una ciutat de tramvies. Estem recuperant aquell llegat, aquella identitat de la nostra ciutat, però per fer-la fàcil, còmoda. Avui és el millor transport públic. Els usuaris diuen que el millor transport públic és el tramvia. Per tant, anem a completar una connexió existent a la ciutat que facilitaria incrementar els viatgers, incrementar el confort. I a més ho estem fent també garantint l'accés de tothom, perquè hi ha una qüestió bàsica. El dret a la mobilitat s'ha de garantir. I hem fet unes tarifes també més justes. Qui més utilitza el transport públic, menys paga per aquest transport públic. Aquesta idea és molt important, perquè les classes treballadores, les classes populars de les nostres ciutats necessiten aquestes alternatives accessibles, perquè massa temps se'ls ha dit compra't un cotxe i podràs arribar fàcil a la teva feina. Per tant, ara és realment la ciutat, les administracions planifiquem tot això per garantir precisament que les ciutats compleixin amb aquests objectius de salut, de zero accidents, de seguretat, de que siguin llocs on voler i on poder viure. I per tant, jo crec que aquests reptes, amb totes aquestes transformacions de carril bicicleta, fan compatibles això. Fan possible que un de cada 3 carrers a Barcelona siguin llocs on estar, on jugar, on viure aquesta extensió natural de les nostres cases, que són els carrers de Barcelona, igual que de la resta de les ciutats, i també que 2 de cada 3 carrers siguin prioritaris per bicis, per transport públic. Per tant, una xarxa que planifiqui una ciutat on poder i on voler viure. Gràcies.
Gràcies, Janet. Crec que és molt important que avui es mencioni i parlem dels infants, dels nens i les nenes, que potser sovint no els tenim prou en compte. I és curiós perquè segurament som l'única espècie que ha creat entorns suposadament fets a mida per nosaltres, entorns urbans en aquest cas, que van literalment en contra, que són hostils per les seves pròpies cries o que directament són contràries a la seva i a la nostra pròpia salut. Així que segurament hauríem d'aplicar aquesta perspectiva i endavant. Jo crec que sempre que tenim l'ocasió de coincidir t'he dit més, i suposo que esteu una mica entremig de la gent que us diu us esteu passant i la gent que us demana més, però és que la situació és tan crítica que ho requereix. Aleshores, let me turn back to English mode. Let's talk about pedestrians and bikes, because I completely agree that they should own the streets. And that means that as citizens we need to be aware that there's a different hierarchy on which cars are probably at the bottom of the pyramid. And I think one city is pretty convinced about this decision, which is Milan. Milan is one of those cities that is given streets and squares back to its citizens. And I wanted, Pierfrancesco, you to tell us that aside from working on the Piazze Aperte for many years, now you are also implementing this concept in the Strade Aperte. And as we were saying, also working with the kids, for the kids, creating safe and healthy space around schools. What do these spaces consist of, and what kind of uses do you foresee in them?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Well, first, let me congratulate with Barcelona, because year after year is becoming better and most beautiful every year, so it's fantastic to be here. Well, our city, I would consider it always on the mentality of a car-oriented city. In the past, so car-oriented that when I was sitting at their position, I remember when they approved a subway, they said, so the traffic will be better on the ground for cars. We are trying to change this kind of a mentality. For example, 10 years ago, the first act we made as I was in charge of mobility was to introduce a congestion charge to reduce car in the city center. But we should, as many of you said, we should also work on alliances to make possible a change. Of course, you need a will, you need inspiration, but you need people asking for change, because you know, every time you made a change, there is somebody that is against, as you said. I would be worried if there is not organized people that want to support a change. For example, sometimes we made some experience with a top-down change, and you have people against and people in favor that said yes, but not in that way. So the way you work, for us, it's very important. For example, we improved our team. That is so important. I have to thank Jeanette Sadikan, because by the experience of Bloomberg Foundation, we also created a team. You will meet Demetrio tomorrow with a presentation about it, that help us to improve our project. But on the other side, we have to work to convince citizens to fight for a future and to defend a change. So that is part of the strategy of Open Square and Open Streets. The first Open Square Act was about to change 20 to 30 squares around the city. It was asked by citizens. We made a public tender, and we say, in which places you want to change? So they propose places, we work together, and we made it. Now we made the second step, and it was open squares for kids. So we said, everybody here think that around school it should be a carefree place, but it's not that in most of the schools in the city of Milan. So we ask citizens, let's organize by student association, by teachers, etc., to make some proposal, and we will evaluate it. We closed the tender 10 years ago, and we have 80 proposals to change 80 schools around the city. I don't know if we will do all 80, because 80 is much, but we want to work to that. In our program, the idea is to change 30 schools by the Winter Olympic Games in 2026. So the idea that we need to create communities that ask and support change, because that is the most important thing. If you change without people, you can't obtain the goal, because the goal is, of course, to improve our city, to face climate change, but also to create a community that lives better. So you have to work with community, and that is what we are trying to do with this project. One last thing, many of our cities has changed after the pandemic. The first thing we made, we are not the only one, many cities, we said, let's allow bars and restaurants to stay on the open square more than before. And it is also part of the alliance, because usually when we started to reduce parking places, to reduce traffic, they were the first to protest. And after they can put tables outside, they were saying, oh, our street is perfect for table outside. Yes, okay, there's a little traffic, but don't worry, we stay together. So the fact that even some people that were the most against, if you introduce them in an idea of a different public space, can help you to change. Thank you.
It's great to see, Pier Francesco, other examples of tactic urbanism, which we have also applied in Barcelona in order to prototype, no? to test, to experiment in public space with low budgets, with low cost, and therefore afterwards see if it's working well to make it eventually with like a conventional urban design project. Let's compare this with the case of Ljubljana, where streets such as Petkopskovo have been pedestrianized, but always including also public transport again. Rok, the river banks are being redesigned. There are many ongoing projects. Can you please explain us what will all these changes bring about?
Thank you. Hello to everybody. I became deputy mayor at the end of January this year. I'm representing Ljubljana. It is really small city, 300,000 inhabitants, a little more than that. A little less than that, and I will talk mostly about successful redevelopment made by previous deputy mayor. So the redesign of streets and squares is part of the general concept of expanding central pedestrian areas in Ljubljana. Its concept was visionarily established in 2007 by Professor Janez Koželj, my longtime predecessor. He's here among us, and he will also present it in detail tomorrow. In 16 years, he implemented the urban transformation of the city center of Ljubljana, which also includes river embankments, as the river is one of the key motives and generators of public space in the city core. So maintaining and developing different and diverse forms of public transport is key to support and encourage residents in these areas, as well as to revitalizing the transformed urban space with new programs. Just as public transport is important for transformed streets and squares, bridges are also important for transformed river embankments. With bridges, the picturesque riverside area, which was degraded area, mainly used as parking lot, was transformed into a connected longitudinal park on both river banks. Every new bridge is a river stop prepared for the future river public transportation. Since the river was once before the regulation of the riverbed, the main traffic street for merchants' boats, the existing urban morphology is already connected to the riverside space. Above all, it was necessary to recognize this potential and to have the courage to decide on the reintegration of the river with the city, this time based on values of open public space. The results showed very quickly. This space became a magnet for walkers and cyclists. New programs changed people's behavior, forming new community, experiencing urban life. These spaces encourage people to stay and to stroll. They encourage ever new events in the public space, such as street theater, boating, sports events on the river, concerts, science festival for youngest, and so on. Of course, on the other hand, these spaces, in addition to local people's and the visitors from the region and other parts of the country. It also attracts an ever-increasing amount of tourists, which presents a unique problem that will become a big challenge. For the first phase of the renovation, which covers approximately a quarter of the water area in the city center, Ljubljana received here in Barcelona an important award in 2012, the European Award for Open Public Space. The continuation of the renovation we presented on this year's MIPIM Fair, which will cover 9 kilometers of riverside space, will follow the initial concept of transportation into a longitudinal park as a continuation of the further development of the city. This renovation, which we are planning in the coming years, in cooperation with the state, will enable a new form of public transport with boats on a circular waterway. The river with the bypass channel defines the old city center with the Castle Hill and new residential and educational areas as an island. And that will be a new opportunity for a throughout consideration of the harmonious development of the city with open public space and natural values. It was strategically made possible by the construction of new green energy infrastructure. We will build 3 small hydroelectric power plants on existing waterlogs and dams. So these are further plans, some of them, and but probably the big picture we will get tomorrow with presentation of Professor Janez Koželj, who is here, and I'm very proud to be here with him and to share all your thoughts and all the knowledge you have. Thank you for the invitation.
Thanks, Rock. Some of the streets and projects we've been talking about remind me of the case of Vitoria-Gasteiz. Raimundo, te he dejado para el final, pero ya llegamos. And actually, I know that team members of the Urban Superblock Barcelona plan visited, actually, Vitoria to learn about their projects and to specifically learn about the pavements you use, so we could maybe apply them in the new green streets we are creating in La Champla. In Vitoria-Gasteiz, Raimundo, you have the San Martin Superblock, or as you call it, Zabalgana, where 72% of the surface belongs to pedestrians and 28% to the roadway. Was it an isolated strategy, or was it a part of a broader plan? And maybe you could tell us more about Lo Serran project and the human scale city concept, which you're really taking into consideration.
Buen día, buenos días. Aunque suene retórico, agradecer desde luego la visita y haber podido asistir a este foro tan interesante y bueno, pues todas las intervenciones que he tenido de ciudades que hemos tenido la oportunidad de escuchar. Pocos ingredientes más voy a poder añadir a mi intervención porque creo que prácticamente son estrategias muy parecidas y además con desarrollos completos. Así que lo que voy a intentar sobre todo es trasladar esas experiencias que hemos tenido durante tantos años, ¿no? Curiosamente antes venían a aprender, hoy hemos venido a aprender a Barcelona, lo que quiere decir es que habéis estado haciendo los deberes de forma correcta, ¿no? Vitoria-Gasteiz, para quien no la conozca, en el 2012 fue Green Capital, fue desde luego uno de los espaldarazos más importantes y que además ha marcado dentro de la ciudad una impronta extraordinaria a la hora de lo que sería la cultura de sostenibilidad. Somos una ciudad con una ciudadanía muy exigente, con una cultura muy alta pero muy exigente en lo que nos piden. siempre suelo decir, medio en broma, que da mucho trabajo, pero lo cierto que da gusto que estemos trabajando en estas políticas cada vez más con el apoyo de la ciudadanía. Y también pues tenemos el reto, más que la oportunidad, pero yo creo que es un gran reto, el que hemos sido nombradas una de las 100 ciudades que debemos alcanzar la neutralidad climática en el 2030, ¿no? Así que con estos dos grandes retos, decir que somos una ciudad que queremos construir a escala humana, venimos trabajándolo desde hace muchos años, independientemente de cómo haya sido la corporación que presidía en ese momento el ayuntamiento o el color político de las personas que lo lleven, ¿no? Y esa también es una de las razones que tienen el reconocimiento de esta ciudad. Somos una ciudad un poquito más pequeña que Ljubljana, 255.000, pero bueno, en este caso ya estaríamos en el pelotón de la más pequeña, ¿no? Pero como os decía antes, con una cultura de sostenibilidad importantísima. Dentro de los objetivos de urbanismo que hemos venido trabajando durante muchos años y que en esta legislatura hemos estado apostando pues, desde el inicio, es en evitar los suburbios dentro de la ciudad. No queremos ciudades con barrios que sean suburbios. Y eso tiene una complejidad en una ciudad que es muy llana, que tiene mucho terreno y que la posibilidad de crecer es tremenda. O sea, es muy fácil crecer. Y cuando crecemos nos damos cuenta que nos estamos complicando no solamente la movilidad, sino también hasta el propio gasto del ayuntamiento. Como responsable de espacio público, pues en Vitoria eso supone en pocos años 5 millones de euros más los que tenemos que dedicar de las arcas a todos aquellos servicios en ese crecimiento de la ciudad tan importante. Pero para eso, bueno, tenemos que ir distribuyendo. Y para empezar a distribuir los servicios, lo primero que tenemos que distribuir son los servicios de la propia administración. El ayuntamiento tiene que estar representado en todos los barrios y tiene que dar solución administrativa a muchas de las necesidades, aunque sean las más sencillas que tenga la ciudadanía, pero también en el ocio, pero también en el comercio, o también para recuperar y para tener esos espacios públicos recuperados o existentes donde puedan estar cómodos o donde se pueda podamos ser espacios culturales o también que puedan ser espacios en los que sencillamente puedo salir a aburrirme sin necesidad de tener que ir al centro de la ciudad. Dentro del urbanismo, ya hemos hablado de lo que es la distribución equilibrada de este equipamiento que tenemos que hacer todos los centros para que toda la ciudad sea una ciudad viva. Existen para nosotros 6 palancas que son muy importantes. La primera es menos consumo del suelo. Esa es una de las estrategias que queremos desarrollar y es una de las máximas que apostamos todos los días. Tenemos mucho suelo y tenemos mucho suelo en la que ya hemos construido, ¿no? Tenemos que seguir extendiéndonos como municipio. Más transporte alternativo. Luego comentaré un poquito más profundamente lo que es el transporte público y cómo ha evolucionado en la ciudad. Más ciudad para el peatón. Recuperar esos espacios públicos es importantísimo. Como estrategia que utilizamos es aquel asfalto que queda libre y en el que ya no pasa el vehículo. Lo primero que solemos implementar son unos volardos para quitar ese espacio. A continuación lo pintamos, lo enrejamos y cuando tenemos algo de presupuesto ya estiramos espacio público y lo dedicamos a otras cosas. Yo creo que es una estrategia de mancha de aceite en la que poco a poco tenemos que ir evolucionando. Más superficie verde. Vengo de una parte del Estado que ya de por sí es verde, no tenemos después el problema del agua que podéis tener aquí de momento, pero desde luego viendo cómo va subiendo este problema del sur a norte, pues tenemos que empezar a pensar que nuestra superficie verde y sobre todo la ciudad tiene que ir creciendo, infraestructura verde, que luego explicaré en uno de los proyectos, el proyecto de los Serran, y luego estamos trabajando por tener esa autosuficiencia energética y de agua. Eso es en positivo, eso lo tenemos que trabajar y lo tenemos que trabajar, bueno, pues ideas iguales como las que ha tenido Valencia, ¿no? Y que habría que analizarlas, a ver hasta dónde se pueden desarrollar. Y luego como una de la sexta palanca y que queremos desarrollar, como os digo, es menos residuos. Tenemos que ser una ciudad que tengamos menos residuos, que manchemos menos. Principales principios rectores, y cuando hablo de principios rectores quiero hacer y valorar muy positivamente la participación que tiene la ciudadanía a la hora de saber y conocer qué estrategia tiene que llevar el ayuntamiento. Una vez que la corporación es elegida y que comienza el trabajo, no podemos olvidar que hay una ciudadanía que además pide, que exige, como decía al inicio, y que nos tiene que marcar cómo quiere esas prioridades. Prioridades no solamente desde la estrategia, sino además prioridades económicas, de cómo tiene que ser y cómo se tiene que desarrollar el presupuesto. Y esos principios rectores los hemos dejado claros. Solamente voy a marcar algunos de ellos, los que he considerado que son más importantes. Accesibilidad universal. mejora del espacio público, que vele por los colectivos más vulnerables. La ciudad es de todos y la ciudad tiene que estar gestionada para todos. Reducir la accidentabilidad es una de las lacras que tenemos en este momento. No podemos estar todos los días pendientes de cuando la policía local nos está diciendo que hemos tenido un incidente en una calle con un atropello, que menos mal, no siempre acaba mal, pero donde realmente empezamos a tener cifras que son importantes. Nos da igual que vaya en patinete, en bici, vehículo, que tengamos este tipo de incidentes, desde luego que es una preocupación y que tenemos que tomar ya riendas, tenemos que tomar ya soluciones tajantes. No podemos estar en los números que tenemos y acostumbrarnos a que estos incidentes se conviertan año a año en algo totalmente normal. Queremos gestionar también lo que es la entrega de mercancías. Supongo que, como en otras ciudades de los que estáis aquí, uno de los grandes problemas que tenemos es en el reparto de la paquetería en los centros de las ciudades o en los barrios de las ciudades. Esos 2 o 3 viajes que algunas compañías de transporte tienen que hacer para entregarnos el paquete, lo que llamamos generalmente la entrega de la última milla. Ese es uno de los retos que estamos trabajando y de los que queremos ir desarrollando, porque es una necesidad. Se trata de quitar... luego hablaré rápidamente de los vehículos, que tampoco los quiero demonizar, pero desde luego que ese tránsito que tenemos en las capitales en la entrega de la mercancía se tiene que reducir, tenemos que racionalizar. Y luego la incorporación de las nuevas tecnologías. Tenemos esa posibilidad, la tenemos que conocer, la digitalización de muchos de los servicios, la digitalización de muchos de los procesos y procedimientos, desde luego que nos van a ayudar a tomar esta situación. Queremos ganar un espacio público, como decimos, para ganar el derecho al paso, al poder estar, como decía antes, a tener una vida cultural en ese espacio público mayor, la posibilidad de expresarnos libremente o, como digo, aburrirnos cuando toca el momento de aburrirnos. Convertir, en definitiva, lo que es el peatón en ciudadano, que yo creo que es una categoría diferente que habíamos perdido, ¿no? Para ello hay 3 palancas también que quiero desarrollar. Uno es la red peatonal, el transporte público y la bicicleta. Creo que estos 3 puntos son los que hay que desarrollar y son los que vamos trabajando. Hay que planificar, hay que construir. Tenemos una ciudad con una red peatonal donde aproximadamente el reparto modal, para que nos hagamos una idea, más del 50% de los tránsitos que se hacen en Vitoria-Gasteiz se hacen a pie. Es una ciudad muy cómoda, prácticamente hay un radio de 3,5 kilómetros del centro a cualquier lugar de la periferia, lo que permite, bueno, pues en no demasiado tiempo poder situarnos en cualquier sitio, ¿no? Tenemos un anillo verde exterior fantástico que nos separa de lo que es la zona rural y que nos permite ir de una facilidad o con bastante poco tiempo, ¿no?, situarnos en una zona, desde luego, que mucho más verde y mucho mejor o más para poder disfrutar, ¿no? Estamos potenciando los bosques urbanos. Estamos pasando de aquellos jardines que tenemos que son ornamentales a los mismos bosques urbanos. Hemos hecho una importante apuesta por el transporte público. Hemos comprobado en estos últimos años que tanto la bonificación en el transporte es importante y eso ha conseguido que en los últimos meses hayamos alcanzado los usos que teníamos en el año 2019, teniendo en cuenta que en el año 2019 los usos que se hacían en el transporte público fueron datos muy buenos. Los hemos recuperado en el año 22 gracias a ese tipo de bonificaciones, pero también hemos aprendido que cuando el transporte público es un transporte público que tiene carriles segregados y tiene una sincronización semafórica exclusiva para ese transporte público, el crecimiento de esas líneas todavía es mucho mayor. Así lo hemos instalado hace pocos meses, el BEI, bus eléctrico inteligente, con carriles segregados y sincronización semafórica, lo que permite llegar y reducir los tiempos de transporte importante. Es una palanca que hay que seguir desarrollando, pero es una palanca que genera también otro tipo de problemas en la ciudad que también hay que resolverlos, porque si no, aquella medida que puede ser buena, una medida que realmente en su desarrollo es muy buena, crecimientos muy importantes en esas 2 líneas que tenemos en Gasteiz, al final se puede convertir en un problema y en un retroceso de esos objetivos. En bicicleta tenemos más de 170 kilómetros de carril bici, más de 170 kilómetros. Trabajamos desde hace muchos años, desde luego, que la creación de esos carriles bicis. Pero para incrementar ese uso modal de la bicicleta tenemos que tener otro tipo de iniciativas o tenemos que impulsar otro tipo de políticas. Últimamente estamos invirtiendo mucho dinero en lo que son los aparcamientos seguros. En Vitoria hay aproximadamente, para que os hagáis una idea, 116.000 bicicletas para 255.000 habitantes. Lo que significa que en muchos sitios de la ciudad y en determinados eventos esas bicicletas aparcan en cualquier lado, ¿no? esos aparcamientos seguros donde nos permita tener la bicicleta aparcada de forma segura, ¿no? Y que la podamos encontrar cuando queramos volver otra vez a nuestras casas, pues bueno, tiene que ser tenida en cuenta. Un mantenimiento muy intensivo también de las vías ciclables. No se trata solamente de tener muchos kilómetros, porque cuando venimos a este tipo de eventos rápidamente sacamos el número de, y disculpad, que yo soy el primero de decir cuál es el número de kilómetros que tenemos como vías ciclistas, pero luego hay que mantenerlas. Y para eso hay que dedicar dinero desde el propio presupuesto municipal, algo que no se hacía habitualmente. Introducir dinero porque eso se va desgastando y además queremos no solamente tener esos carriles, sino que además queremos que se sigan manteniendo. Por lo tanto, mantenimiento intensivo. Y luego hay que buscar una cultura empresarial. Para llegar a datos como puede tener Copenhague no se hace solamente con tener mucho carril bici, tener mucha bicicleta y tener aparcamientos seguros y hasta tener una ordenanza para esos aparcamientos seguros como es lo que tenemos ahora. Además, trabajando esa cultura de la bicicleta, impulsando otro tipo de actividades, formación, la gente que ahora y hasta ahora no estaba andando en bici, que tiene cierta edad, donde su habilidad a la hora de montarse en una bicicleta puede ser menor, hay que formarla, y a todas aquellas personas pequeñas que se van a incorporar hay que enseñarles a andar en bici, hay que enseñarles a andar en bici en la ciudad, no solamente en los patios de los colegios o en los parques, sino también en la ciudad. Para ir acabando, vehículo privado. Como decía antes, yo no quiero demonizar al vehículo privado, para nada, no tiene que ser nuestro enemigo. Os aconsejo paciencia, mucha paciencia. Hay que adaptar. También la ciudadanía tiene la necesidad de utilizar el vehículo, pero desde la propia semántica, cuando hablamos de recorridos parásitos, ¿no? Parece que no sé si es la más correcta en ocasiones. Tenemos que educar. Tenemos que trasladar esa necesidad, tenemos que ir cambiando ese criterio que tiene la sociedad, que es cierto, que nos han vendido los vehículos y que tenemos los vehículos para andar, para ir absolutamente a todos los sitios. Y estas cosas yo os puedo decir que se pueden hacer poco a poco, aunque en ocasiones, bueno, hay que dar soluciones efectivas. Y, por ejemplo, hay que hacer aparcamientos disuasorios para todas las personas que vienen, en nuestro caso, del exterior de la ciudad, para que tengan un lugar para aparcar ese coche y un transporte público que les permita llegar a aquellas zonas donde quieran. Dos retos importantes. Hemos hablado un poco de los entornos escolares. Yo, si os parece, os cuento la experiencia que hemos tenido en Gasteiz con los entornos escolares. Hace 2 años, aproximadamente 2 años y medio, cuando íbamos el departamento a hablar con las direcciones de los colegios y con los padres, con las AMPAs, cuando íbamos a hablar y les mostrábamos el riesgo que tenían en la entrada y en la salida del colegio de sus hijos, de sus alumnos, os puedo asegurar, y no es una broma, que poco a poco, gracias que éramos gobierno municipal, pero nos podían haber sacado a patadas. Aquello era un problema que les estábamos generando y una complicación sobre todo para lo que sería a futuro sus propios, la propia continuidad de los proyectos educativos. Hoy os puedo asegurar que nos están llamando. Hoy os puedo asegurar que la seguridad vial en los entornos escolares es un problema que ya los propios centros escolares lo están solicitando, que vayamos, que trabajemos con ellos, que veamos cuáles son las posibilidades y que vayamos haciendo cosas para tener esos entornos seguros. Eso va cambiando la sociedad. No ha sido una cosa de un trabajo que nosotros hayamos realizado solamente en estos 2 años, que haya tenido éxito, sino que creo que poco a poco la sociedad se va impregnando de esa necesidad y está exigiendo que esos centros escolares, tanto en el tránsito de los que puedan ir andando, de los que puedan ir en bici y añado también de los que tengan necesariamente que ir en vehículo, se haga de forma ordenada y se haga de forma segura. Así que creo que en esto lo único que podemos es ganar. Y tenemos que tener también otros aspectos que hemos ido nosotros aprendiendo. Cuando vemos allá en las fotografías que hemos visto esta mañana, como en ciertos entornos escolares lo que se hace es cerrar la calle, seamos conscientes también que el problema de las dobles filas igual lo estamos trasladando a otros sitios, a los lugares frontera. Lo único que estamos haciendo es repartir el problema. Con lo cual, la visión global, una vez que tomamos decisiones tácticas, de urbanismo táctico, para asegurar sobre todo lo que es el entorno escolar, luego también tenemos que saber que esos problemas hay que ir diluyendo o reduciendo. Y el segundo reto, polígonos industriales como accesos. Tenemos polígonos industriales en la periferia de la ciudad, a la cual hay que dotarle de transporte público. Tenemos un transporte público que además, en nuestro caso, no cueste llegar de tu domicilio a tu puesto de trabajo más de 20 minutos. Menudo reto, ¿no? pero no más de 20 minutos. Pero sabemos que cuando conseguimos llegar a algunos centros, a algunos polígonos industriales, en menos de 20 minutos la gente va dejando sus vehículos privados, ¿no? Ese sería el último reto. Y todos estos ingredientes que he venido contando en este tiempo de forma bastante acelerada es lo que queda reflejado en lo que llamamos el proyecto de los Serran. Todo esto que hemos analizado, todo esto que hemos ido trabajando en ocasiones de forma dispersa, pero en diferentes sitios de la ciudad, va a quedar reflejado en este proyecto que tenemos en la calle Los Serran. Es una arteria que comunica al sur al norte de la ciudad, una de las más importantes, de varios kilómetros, que su última transformación tuvo lugar en el año 1955-1960 con la desaparición de un pequeño tren y una pequeña estación que teníamos allí. Nosotros le denominamos anillo verde interior y que va a tener como ingredientes o como situaciones el reverdecimiento de la misma calle, la mejora de esos recursos híbridos. Los hemos visto esta mañana cuando veníamos andando por aquí, ¿no? Esa utilización del agua de lluvia, que hay que recogerla, que hay que llevarla a esos reservorios y que luego hay que utilizarla en esos tiempos de sequía que no tenemos. Infraestructura verde para bajar la temperatura del suelo y luego el arbolado para sombrear, pero además con los recursos híbridos que tenemos. Reducción de los viales, sí, porque el modo modal de vehículo privado se va reduciendo y, como os decía antes, según se vaya reduciendo, eso lo tenemos que ir ganando. Juegos no competitivos, espacio para la cultura, concretamente muy cerca de esta calle tenemos un museo, uno de los museos más importantes que tenemos en la ciudad. Queremos sacar algunas obras de ese museo también a la calle para que podamos vivirlo de otra manera. Y sobre todo, y ya para acabar, creo que es muy importante que en este tipo de proyectos y en otros que ya he comentado, la sensibilización, la información y la concienciación, ese trabajo a la ciudadanía, sabiendo transmitir qué es lo que queremos, qué es lo que vamos a conseguir, sobre todo cuando no tenemos ejemplos para ver, es lo más importante para que estas cosas puedan salir adelante y puedan ser un éxito. Muchas gracias.
Gracias. Muchas gracias, Raimundo. Qué bonito que hables de la ciudad de escala humana. I think we need to talk about the human scale, but also the more than human scale. Let's start using that concept too, because we need to be conscious and empathic with non-human species with which we share the ecosystem we all inhabit, and therefore we need to be more aware of and also celebrate our interdependency and ecodependency. Having said that, I think we've listened to a lot of visions, ideas, projects, words, Wooners, superblocks, Tabalgana, Gentification, Piazza Verde. The words might change, but I can't help but feel honestly hopeful to see that we are all working in the same direction. And let me just give you some more hope with data in my hands. Only in San Antonio superblock, NO2 levels have been reduced by 25%. In the case of the Poplano superblock, commercial establishments have increased by 33%. Superblocks have shown to increase their natural biodiversity from 9 to 196 new species. And let's not forget that I recently read that a third of deaths due to high temperatures in cities would be avoided if trees covered only 30% of the space. And with such optimistic data, the 3-day international superblock meeting is officially starting. And before we leave, let me give you a glimpse of what you can see or do these following days. Today we'll have a site visit to the first superblock in Barcelona, the one in Poplano, this afternoon, right after lunch. Afterwards, there will be the Superblock Barcelona book presentation with Janet Sadiq Khan and Josep Boigas at Editorial Gustau Gili. Also, what about tomorrow? We will start at Casa Golferix for the city presentation session discussing projects of public space transformation. From there, we will move to San Antonio Superblock. And I'm really interested in this part because we will discuss and sign an agreement, like a manifesto, for this new urban model strategy that has been transforming the streets and bringing life back to them, and I think we all share. And in the afternoon, you'll be able to choose between either participating in a superblock workshop or going on a superblock bike route, which I think is a good plan. The day will finish with a dinner at La Violeta in the neighborhood of Gracia, which is where I live, so I might stop by. And last but not least, on Saturday, we will start with the workshop summary facilitated by Tuner Block at Casa Golferix. And this meeting, this 3-day meeting, will not end up with a closed door workshop. We will have, as I was saying before, a full-day party in the public space in our city called Viu la Superilla, a popular party in Rocafort and Consell de Cent Green Access, Green Streets. So I don't want to tell you more. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. So thank you so much to everyone, to all of you for joining us today, and please make the most of it, of these 3 days of this international Superblock meeting. Thank you so much. It was so interesting to listen to you.